It has become a established fact that a large proportion of new startups fail and that entrepreneurs often go through a number of failure experiences before they become successful with their businesses. The way other people perceive business failure can also have a substantial impact on the entrepreneur's emotional recovery and how they learn from failure for their future career. One of our main arguments is that positive perceptions of failure in the eyes of the public can minimize or at least reduce the social stigmatization of the entrepreneur. Therefore, it becomes important, we think, to understand how entrepreneurs can actually manage public perceptions. There is a large body of research on how entrepreneurs influence perceptions on their venture in closed settings, such as one-on-one pitching sessions where they have the opportunity to interact with the audience and influence those perceptions. However, it is more difficult for the entrepreneur to influence public perceptions of the failure. Judgments of stakeholders such as employers, investors and customers can play an important role in the entrepreneur's future career. First, when you communicate business failure to the public, we argue you hardly know the exact audience judging your failure. Second, you have only one shot to create your public story, and once it's out, there you can hardly make adjustments anymore. So the big question is, how can entrepreneurs manage impressions in the eyes of the public following their failure? What we have found is quite interesting. The more the entrepreneur distances herself or himself from the failure in the public narrative, the more positive the public audience perceives that failure. In particular, that means when entrepreneurs blame failure on external events, on something that's unlikely to happen again and wasn't under their control in the first place, the public failure story creates a more positive impression of the closure of the business. For instance, the global financial crisis, market fluctuations, or geopolitical instability would all be good reasons for explaining your failure to the public. But the question is it always the best strategy for the entrepreneur to distance themselves from business closure so as to create a positive impression amongst the public? And I would say even more importantly, are there ethical problems associated with placing the blame of entrepreneurial failure on external factors? For instance, we found that people who are more empathetic and inclined to understanding others are less likely to perceive an entrepreneur distancing themselves from failure as positive. We also need to consider that our study was conducted in Germany. So one of the main questions emerging from this research is also how generalizable are our findings and do they hold in other cultural contexts?